Hey, what up legends? How's it going? Q Bacon here. Now today I will not be showcasing a deck as there's something much more important and of course obvious to talk about, and those are the card changes that are going to be coming up right after the HCT, which is I believe in either next week or the week after, and there are going to be 6 cards that are getting nerfed this time around. What we're going to do is I'm going to talk about each and every one of those cards and what I think about the nerfs, and then hopefully I can bring my own insight into the matter and change your opinion about them, maybe, or maybe just reinforce it. I don't know, but that's the goal, is just to have a healthy discussion. And to help with that discussion, I decided that I'm going to be giving away just a couple card packs to one of you guys that decides to participate in that. If you're subscribed to the channel and you leave a comment in the comment section of this video letting me know what you think about the card changes, what you think is going to rise in the meta, what you think is going to crash completely, or just, just in general, letting me know what the sense of things is in your general idea. I will enter you in a draw, and then one of you guys is going to win a few card packs. So hopefully that keeps things interesting. The first nerf for next patch is going to be Nagisa, and I am sure and certain that a large portion of the Hearthstone community saw that come in, as many members were asking for a huge change in the past few months, and Blizzard has finally answered. The card itself before nerf was so oppressive on the wild ladder that it could pump ridiculous amount of stats on turn 4 or 5 on levels that could equal Barnes or even surpass it, which is absolutely ridiculous in certain situations. There are so many classes that just cannot answer a threat like that early, and just being able to play a witch and even only 2 giants, which is usually quite easy to do since you have so many in the deck, that your opponent just can't deal with it, and they're just going to die 1 or 2 turns later. So the fact that Nagisa is getting increased from 5 to 8 will slow down the pace of the game. However, it will keep the deck identity there, as Nagisa will still work extremely well with giants. She won't, she won't make it so you can't cast them with her immediately, but you're going to be able to do that at a much later stage of the game, so it is not as oppressive, and classes that would usually have hard times against these decks will now be able to build up their board before that stage of the game happens, which is much more healthy. So in my opinion, the nerf was absolutely warranted, and I'm glad to see that Blizzard is finally taking actions against Nagisa. I personally would have preferred to see her remain at 5 or 6 mana, while on the other hand having a special interaction or something like that, specifically for giants, that make it so you just can't play your giants as early in the game, because the card is really cool. And if you've wanted to play it in other archetypes, aka I don't know, Quest Druid for example, well, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to do so now that she's absolutely ridiculously overcosted. So but overall, pretty good nerf, and I'm happy to see that. Next up, we've got Spiteful Summoner, and I'm glad to say that I'm happy that it will now cost 7 mana up from 6. Now, the idea behind the nerf is that turn 6 is not too difficult to survive in terms of playing a mid-range deck, aka Spiteful Summoner Druid or Spiteful Summoner Priest, as you have a lot of cards that help you get there. But now that it will cost 7, there will be a gap in that curve, and it will be a bit more difficult for those decks to actually gain a lot from the value that they can get from Spiteful Summoner. What I mean by that is a mid-range hunter or paladin, for example, will have one more turn to actually set something huge on the board or draw an answer for Spiteful Summoner, and will then be able to keep the advantage that they previously had on the board and swing in their opponents for massive damage. So I think that delaying the inevitable, quote unquote, is extremely good for the meta, because Spiteful Summoner was cheating out stat at an unprecedented level most of the time. Barnes is another story, but with Barnes you had a huge requirement. In the case of Yashiraj and Barn, you could only play one other minion. In this deck you can play tons of minions, it's just that you do it later in the game. That amount of stats is absolutely insane, so I'm happy that you can actually slow that down just a little bit. 16 stats for 7 mana is much worse than 16 stats for 6 mana. So, to be honest, I don't know if it will do as much as I expected and as Blizzard expected to do, but I definitely hope it does, because if it does, I'm pretty sure we'll see a rise in tempo decks as well as mid-range decks, and I would love to see a good mid-range hunter come back, because it's been a while and I'm ready for it. The third card that's getting nerfed is Dark Pact, and boy am I happy to see that's the case. It restored 8 health to your hero and will now restore half of that at the same cost. Now keep in mind that that is a card that costs 1, and yes, you sacrifice a creature, which is most often the case of a Possessed Lackey or a 1-drop or something like that to restore as much while losing the lowest. It's a card that costs 1 while Kill Command costs 3, and for 3 times as much cost you don't even do more damage than Dark Pact restores. So it's just absolutely oppressive in my opinion. I think that the fact that the healing is reduced by half will enable Zoodax, aka Zoolock, or Face Hunter, or even Burn Mage to come back into the meta. And since Warlocks will not be as potent for healing as it used to be, yes, they'll still have the Spellstone, but they won't have as much healing. I believe that the entire archetype of Cubelock is going to suffer, and in a turn enable those other decks that used to thrive against Warlock way back in the day that now couldn't. So I'm hoping to see a little bit of change just from Dark Pact being nerfed. I don't know if it's enough, but that's why we've got the 4th card that's getting nerfed is Possessed Lackey. Will now cost 6 mana up from 5, and I believe this is going to be one of the final nails in the coffin for Cubelock. Cubelock has been extremely strong for the past 2 expansions, and making it so they can no longer cheat out a huge Void Daddy or Doomguard on turn 5 is just absolutely fantastic. Not only will it be good for Standard, but it will also work for Wild, where it was even easier to cheat out stuff. I believe that Possessed Lackey will make it so the powerful Demon Warlocks or Cubelock decks are going to be reduced in value, and again, just like the other nerfs that we've seen for both Spiteful, Dark Pact, and Nagisa, which will actually help the rise of mid-range decks once again. And also, in some sense, Zoo decks. Anytime that you have a big control deck getting reduced in value, Zoo decks are probably going to come back to chip at the meta to see if it works and all. And if there is less and less because the nerf was too much for most Warlock players, we're probably going to see a shift in Cubelock into either Demon Lock or Zoo Lock. So that's what my guess is for that. You guys are probably going to come back in 3 months and say, Kiwi, you were absolutely wrong. This did not work at all. You're stupid. You're probably right, but in my opinion, that's what it's going to do. And I hope to see it resolved that way. The next nerf is going to be to Call to Arms. It will cost 5 mana up from 4, and I believe is completely warranted. The main problem with Call to Arms, in my opinion, was that it thinned your deck by 3. Not because it put 3 creatures on your board. No. It thins your deck by 3 cards, which means that the resulting turns are going to be much better top decks than if you did not play Call to Arms. Everything that you play after that has a lower chance of getting a smaller costed minion as a top deck. So it does that, and it puts 3 minions on the board at the same time. So you just got board cleared, it's okay. Call to Arms, you get three more creatures. What's good in Paladins? Buffs. Yes, and being able to play that for 4 is not too expensive, so you can still play a ton of buffs on those creatures later on, and your opponent is not going to be able to do much. 5 mana though is an interesting thing. It will not hurt Murloc Paladins too much, and I believe we'll see a bunch of Murloc Paladins still running Call to Arms. Odd Paladin won't be able to run it anymore, and even Paladin won't want to run it because they're going to get 1-drops. So why would they ever do that, right? They're wasting mana on something when they could just play their cards and then draw a bunch with Divine and then just play a bunch more cards afterwards. Why would they play Call to Arms? I don't see it being played in Odd Paladin, but again, I might be wrong. The cool thing, I think, is that we're going to see much less of Call to Arms, and the ones that we're going to see are going to be extremely less powerful. So I think that nerfing Call to Arms is a very good call on Blizzard's part. Thank you. While the Caverns Below has seen some resurgence in the past 2 expansions, it's getting nerfed again. It's been nerfed first time during Ungoro. It was reading play 4 minions with the same name, and then you receive the reward for the quest, which was for the rest of the game your minions are 5/5. Now you have to play 5 with the same name, and now for the rest of your game your minions are going to be 4/4. However, while it dies to Flame Strike, I believe that it's not that big of a change. The core of the deck is still there, and the deck will be reasonable against slow, extremely slow late game decks, but it's still as terrible against aggro. It's still as terrible against mid-range. It's just going to be easier for control decks that are not like extremely control decks, like mid-range 2 control decks. It's going to be easier for those decks to actually come back while playing against a Crystal Core deck, and I think that it will still see play, just not as much as we see currently on the High Legend ladder. I don't know if Blizzard decided to implement this change solely based on what is seen as High Legend, or if they have data for it throughout the entire ladder. I personally have not seen that many Quest Rogue decks underneath rank 5, but that is just one person out of millions that are playing the game. So my opinion is that it will not change too much, and it will actually probably terrorize priests Wink, wink. I've just been reading on Reddit in the past few hours, and I think it's quite funny that now priests are gonna have a little bit harder time against Quest Rogue. That's the only good thing out of the nerf. Yes, it's getting nerfed, but at the same time, it's harder for priests. So, you know, you give a little bit, you lose a little bit. I think that Crystal Core is still going to be somewhat viable. Don't take everything that I say as a warranty. I'm sure I'm wrong, but you guys come back to me in 3 weeks and let me know that I'm a stupid idiot. All right. That is pretty much it for the nerfs that has been revealed by Blizzard today. I don't know quite yet when they're going to implement them. It's probably next week or the week after. They said it was after HCT, so soon, TM, as always with Blizzard. Thanks a lot everyone for watching. Let me know what you think about those nerfs in the comments, and I hope I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.